You're listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 396.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. How's everybody doing today? As always, hope you're doing well. Welcome to any new listeners to the show. And again, hello and thank you to regular listeners. I really appreciate everybody taking time to stop by and listen to what we have to talk about today. And I'm so excited to have an interview today with Spring Council. Spring is a chef, philanthropist, and vintage curator based in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. As the co-owner of Mama Dip's Kitchen, the celebrated restaurant founded by her mother in 1976, Spring spent decades working alongside her siblings to provide traditional country cooking to their customers. She's a Southern Foodways Alliance Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, and today she can be found working alongside her daughter, Tanya Council, at Tanya's Cookies and Cafe. Today on the show, we talk all about Spring's beautiful new book, Southern Roots, Recipes and Stories from Mama Dip's Daughter, and we dive into Spring's time in what she calls Mama Dip's University, Spring's penchant for design, tableware, vintage table pieces. We also talk about Spring's love of vintage cookbooks, her writing habits, and how she developed and wrote the stories for her new book, Southern Roots. We also take a look at several of the recipes inside Southern Roots and the place where these recipes came from. And Spring explains how her recipes are truly rooted in what she knows, but she always tries to add a nice modern twist to make the recipes her own. This was a great interview and so much fun also to talk to Spring about her vintage tableware collection. So if you're interested in thrift shops and vintage tableware, this is an interview that you are not going to want to miss. So without further delay, let's dive into this interview with Spring Council. Hi, Spring. Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, so excited that you're here. Can't wait to dive in and talk all about your beautiful new book. But before we do, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm a chef, an author, and a vintage curator, and I grew up in my mother's kitchen at a home and also in a restaurant for over 50 years.
Yeah, 50 years in a restaurant is no small feat. I think we probably should talk about that first because this was truly the inspiration for what you're doing now with your books and with your business. But let's talk all about your mother. Tell us who your mother was.
My mother was a excellent cook, and she was a community person too. And she just loved people. And when we was growing up as kids, folks knew her because of her love and care and how she gave to the community. And she brought that same love and care to a restaurant at Mama Dip's. And she learned to cook on their farm, a tenant farm in Chatham County, which is outside of Chapel Hill. And so she just wanted to share her food, her love for cooking.
Yeah.
And she actually did her first meal at age 9.
Wow. And she went by Mama Dip. What was her name?
Her name is Mildred Council.
Yes.
And the customers started calling her Mama Dip. We had a situation where a franchise seller asked us to join their country kitchen franchise, and so we didn't do that. And then they said we was infringing on the copyright. And so I said, well, Mama, people are calling you Mama Dip already, so we just name it Mama Dip. So that's and Dip is her nickname.
Yes.
And they heard us call her Mama, and so they started calling her Mama Dip.
Yes, and I read that she was tall and she had long arms and she could reach into things and dip out water or food just because of her stature, correct?
Yes, she likes to dip water out of the water barrel at the home.
Well, I come from a family of tall girls. We were all tall, and I just love the fact that she was tall. And I think it's very helpful in a kitchen, don't you think, to be tall and strong and like someone that cooks? And loves looking at pictures of her and seeing the restaurant is no longer open. Is that correct?
That's correct, huh?
Yeah.
And yeah, being taught is good in the kitchen because you means the shelves. And a lot
Yes.
of times I'm at the grocery store. Excuse me. I'm at the grocery store, and people ask me if I can get some off the shelf for them. So I find that kind of amusing when they
It
do
is.
that.
It is amusing. So you got hype from your mom also.
Yes.
Yes. So you worked alongside her in the restaurant business for 50 years.
Yeah, well, she passed away in 2018, and so I've been there when we first started. She was a cook, and I was a waitress when we first started off. And then, as the business grew, more family members came in and stopped working. It was right after I graduated high school, the year after that I started doing that,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to be by her side.
Yes. And I think that um, business itself and the restaurant business is completely different than cookbook writing and writing a cookbook. But I'd love to talk a little bit about the business side of Mama Dips and the things that you learned and experienced and were able to take away from what you call Mama Dip University.
Well, one thing is that we building a community around food. My mom built that community of people and welcome everybody to the table. We had people that came to the restaurant that didn't have money to spend for food, and we would feed them. After we closed at the end of the night, we had certain people would come by and we would just fix them whatever the leftover food was to make sure you have a meal. And it was all about making sure that people felt welcome and comfortable, and no one felt like they was better than anyone else. We didn't let a celebrity come in and jump ahead of somebody else. We treated everybody like a celebrity. And so within that space, people love Mama. She loved talking. She had the special chair that she sat in the dining room and just to greet the customers. And if she was in the kitchen working, she would ask the customers to come on back to the kitchen, and they'll go back there, take a picture, have a conversation with her. So she really built that love and welcome atmosphere in the restaurant.
Yeah. She was there every day.
Yeah, she was there every day. Yeah, she loved cooking. She loved talking to the customers, and she also helped a lot of folks that people really didn't want to give a chance. She had people from the prison come in and work through the work release program. She also helped people in the drug addiction halfway houses, gave them jobs, and she actually had refugees from Burma that
Yeah.
came in from the church, and she gave them jobs. So her door was always open to everyone. A lot of university students waited tables there. Of course, the family was there, had like 3 generations working at one time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really a way that you get to know your family well when you're working together in an environment like that.
Yes, and we worked so much in the restaurant that the customers that came in, they were like our connection to the outside world. So that's how we really created that atmosphere of being someone's friend or somebody making people feel like they're our family.
Yeah. I think
Because that
that's
was,
probably
Mhm,
one of the best things about a restaurant like that, that truly is a community space where people can come and truly feel welcome.
mhm.
And restaurants that can create that and that can sustain that for many years in one community, they become a fixture in the community.
Yes, yeah, we was a fixer and we decided to close. It was a hard thing for people, to say that Mama Dips will no longer be there. And one of the biggest thing is that the New Year's Day meal, that was a really big thing at Mama Dips. So that was a tough one. But my daughter actually started preparing that this year, her restaurant. She has a bakery cafe. But it's amazing how people came into the restaurant. They come in as single, then they come back with a date, then they
Oh,
get married and have children, and then the children go off to college and bring their friends back. So we saw the whole process through those years of how people family was. We knew
yeah.
the cousins, the aunts, and uncles, and this is one particular customer came in. I could always remember what a person would order when I was waiting tables, but I could not remember names so much with so many people. So this one particular customer was come in, he'd bring about 6 or 8 people in to eat. And he'd say, Spring, tell him what I'm going to eat, and I tell him what he's going to eat. And they just all have a big laugh and a good time. So
That's
it was just a
funny.
fun space to be in.
Yeah. So what did the New Year's Day meal consist of?
The New Year's Day meal consists of roasted pork and for good health, collard greens for lots of money, black eyed peas for good luck, and my mama added some yams, to it to give a little sweetness to the meal,
Yes.
and people just loved it. They came near and far.
Yes. And
And that,
New Year's Day is a fun day to do something like that. I think
Mhm.
I've heard of people having traditions on New Year's Day that it's just it's a fun day to celebrate with food, different than Christmas and different than Thanksgiving because of
Mhm.
the new year and the excitement and the opportunity that a new year presents. So um, it's
Yeah.
exciting. No matter what day of the week it was on, she was always open on New Year's Day.
Always. So it was the busiest day for us of the year. It was,
Interesting. Yeah,
and it's special because people pretty much eat the same thing. Everybody's eating the same thing,
yeah,
the pork, the collards, the black eyed peas. Yeah.
yeah. Were you open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
We on for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, yes. And then at the maybe last maybe 10 to 15 years, she stopped serving breakfast and just did lunch and dinner.
Yeah,
She did breakfast because, we here anyway, we're working, just let the people in the door, we're cooking breakfast.
yeah.
And then we finally convinced her, Mom, maybe we shouldn't do breakfast anymore. So we finally stopped doing that.
Yeah. What was
Mm.
her favorite thing to cook?
Wow. Um, Mama loved to bake pies, and she used to make these fried, dried apple pies, and that was a special thing. It was, at the restaurant. She'd sit back there and roll that, crust out in the circle and make the little dried spices and with the apples, and she loved that. And
Yeah.
I would assist her doing that sometimes when she wasn't able to get up and move around so much. I would take the apple pie that she fried them and stick them in the oven so they can really get heated through. And yeah, but she loved that, and it was really good too.
Yeah. I think back when people would dry apples or have dried apples, it was a really uh, nice thing to do with the dried apples to make those fried pies. But I don't know if people dry fruit as much as they used to. And to have that kind of an ingredient available and then making something with it, it really is a special thing. No,
Yes.
I believe based on what I read and what you told me through our communication before the show, you put some of your own interests and pursuits kind of on hold in order to work in the restaurant. Let's talk a little bit about that. You creative person, you interested in fashion design. I read you
Mhm,
even maybe thought about becoming a model. And
mhm.
tell us how that went for you and what you obviously ended up deciding to stay with the restaurant, but what was that point in your life like? And as a result of your decision, what you brought to the restaurant?
Well, it was, yeah, I did want to be a fashion buyer. People was always telling me I should model. And I want to go to Atlanta to the Institute of a Fashion Institute of America, I think it was
Yeah,
in Atlanta at the time. And I wanted to go there. And I didn't get support from my mama. And, she's probably right. I'm probably too gullible to be going to a big city.
yeah,
And so instead, I decided to just come and work at the restaurant rather than go off to college. And I just sort of used my creativity there, in the way I plated the food before we even thought about a food stylist. I want the food to look on the plate. And I would take and, go to the thrift stores and try to build my tableware. And I sort of got creative in that process of that. And then that sort of came from my grandmother too. When I was a kid, she used to set these pretty tables for the Willing Workers Club from the church. And I used to always go by her house to see what her table was going to look like. And when I remember as a kid looking at that table, I not only saw those pretty crystal and china and silver there, but I saw the women that's going to actually sit at that table and eat from those things. And their job was to help the people in the community. Their job was to figure out what are we going to do to support the poor in the community.
yeah,
And so me setting the table was not more about setting a fancy table, but setting a table to make sure people feel comfortable at home and welcome to the table.
yeah. And I think that your mom had advice when it came to plates and silverware. And what did she always say about things like that?
Well, she was saying, always use your nice things. Don't put them in a china cabinet. Just
Yeah,
sit there and use them often. That she would say, and I do. I have a little breakfast table. I always set it up to make sure that I just don't go eat on the couch, but I sit down at the table and enjoy my meal. And I just love sitting at a table and having people over and they just get a thrill out of it looking at the table setting and especially when they see their name cards with that
oh,
name card the name on it really feel special. I took time out to put their name on the card and they
yeah,
really feel welcome then.
yeah. So I've heard you say twice since I've been talking to you here today about the importance of an experience that somebody has when they sit at your table, when they come into your restaurant,
Mhm.
making them feel welcome. It sounds like that's something that you definitely learned from your mom.
I did learn that. When we were growing up as kids, and even our home holiday parties, if there
Oh
was
yeah.
someone that didn't have spaces to go to eat, she would welcome to our table. And so we always had guests coming, maybe a student that wasn't able to go home, and they would come to our house to eat. And so she really taught us to set a nice atmosphere. We actually decorated really nice at her home as well, and she had her china patterns and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that maybe that's part and parcel of being from a big family. My mom was kind of the same. We lived in Lexington, Kentucky, and the University of Kentucky was like right there, and we lived at home and we would take classes. But she
Mhm.
always told us if we knew anybody that couldn't go home for Thanksgiving or they couldn't go home for Christmas, just to bring them over, and carried that through to my own children. And uh, at Easter many years ago, my daughter, a girl, could not go home, and she brought her to our family gathering in Louisville. And I think that when you're cooking for a large group of people, one more place to set or one more mouth to feed is not any big deal. And I think it makes people feel special when you do that for them. And I think it's an amazing thing that your mother did to not only do that in her own home, but then that she extended that feeling into her restaurant,
Yes, she did. Mhm.
which makes her restaurant almost just like an extension of her home, right?
Yeah, it was. It was that for us, and just, people coming in and eating, and we spoke to everybody that came into, and we trained our staff. Even if you're not going to wait on a particular person, make sure that you greet them when they came in the door. And the customer had questions about us. They want to know about my mama, how she got her name. They want to know how long we've been in business. And so we actually created a training test to give to our staff to make sure that they knew the answers
Oh,
to those
wow. Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Mhm.
you knew people were going to ask. You wanted them to report the right, tell the right thing.
Yes. Mhm.
How'd you set the tables at the restaurant?
Well, the restaurant she had like these beige plates with a burgundy stripe around it. So we
Yeah.
really didn't set the table. She had the cloth napkins to start with on Sundays, and then she would just have just a nice glasses and things. It wasn't like set up.
Right. Was it a restaurant where people ordered off a menu and then the food would be brought to their table? Or was it past family style? Or how was the food served?
We have a full service restaurant where the server will take your order and we bring the food to
Yeah.
the table.
Yeah.
And we also had a family style menu. Sometimes large parties want to come in, or maybe a wedding rehearsal dinner, and we would offer them family style.
Yeah. You mentioned when you were talking about design, the way you plated the food. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? There might be people that are listening that aren't like, what kind of design could I use to plate food?
Mhm.
Maybe they've seen it at a really fancy high-end restaurant, but I think it's really neat that you brought that desire that you had to make the food look nice on the plate. What kinds of things did you do to make it look better?
Well, so I was just pretty much plating traditional Southern food. So I didn't have like tweezers or anything. I just make sure that that piece of fried chicken was just laying over to the side, and those potatoes, when I put that gravy on those potatoes, it was just splashed on. I make sure there's like a little indent, like a
Yeah.
circle that held those potatoes, and just make sure those vegetables were separate and not all piled together. It's fun. I went to this restaurant and I had this yogurt bowl. And I said, "Oh, this is a nice yogurt bowl." And so now I go home and rather than put my yogurt in a bowl, deep bowl, I put in like a little shadow plate,
Huh.
and then and I just spread it off on there and then just put the food on just like the restaurant did,
Well, I
because I
guess
like
that,
the way they did.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think you're
Mhm,
right. If that was a way, and if you do it too deep, then you can't really see anything.
right,
Yeah,
mhm,
yeah.
and
So you
that you
so
can
you
sit
were
down, so
inspired by that with something recently then.
yes, mhm, and so now when I do my yogurt, I make sure it's in the shadow bowl so I can sort of spread it out and, put my little toasted coconut on there, and thus now I have like a yogurt, containers, and I have all my nuts and my toasted coconuts and my dried fruit, and of course, I keep my mangoes, my blueberries, and bananas and stuff, so that's one of my main breakfast items. I love to eat the yogurt.
Nice.
Mhm.
So that's great. The way that everyone can use the design tip like that when they're making their own yogurt bowls at
Mhm.
home. Why not make them look nice and enjoy them even in our own kitchen?
So with even when I'm entertained at home, I like to use the nice coupes and the little small petite glasses, and just to put on. I have these like old fashioned crystal candy jars. So you open up, and so I put a salad in that. So when people come to the table, they see the salad in this covered candy dish. So that's a way I can reuse that over the time. And I go to the thrift shop and I just keep finding them. I just collect till I get a set of 8. And that's all I have enough to do a party,
Huh.
so I do
And
it
so you
that way.
put your salad then in it, and everybody has their own
And
candy dish with the salad in it.
yes,
That's great.
so
Yeah.
mhm.
Hmm.
So they sort of give them this special presentation, and people like to see stuff like that on the table. So and
Yeah.
I enjoy doing it too. Give me that sense of creativity that I like to do.
I
Yeah.
go into a vintage shop and I'm always amazed at the things that are in there. Because
Mhm.
what are people going to do? They can't, I guess you could throw it away, but there's just so much, and there's so many vintage shops. You could go into any town in any uh, state, and there's usually some sort of antique shop or vintage shop, and
Mhm.
just so much stuff. It's beautiful, and a lot of beautiful colored glass, and I think it's a wonderful way to collect things for your table. And I know that you have an interest also in looking for vintage cookbooks when you go to the stores.
Yes, I definitely have a good collection of those. Yeah. And I just love those cookbooks because I think looking at the old cookbooks should give you more room for creativity in the sense that I can take this recipe and, make a change to it. For instance, like the bacon wrap cracker, I found in the book and I took and made that into a cracker BLT, a BLT cracker. In a sense, I just added it to tomatoes and mayo and put it on there. So just sort of seeing that recipe, oh, what can I do that to make it different? That's what I like about the old books. And the old books sort of tell a story about who actually owned that book. I had found this Creole book. I think it's called the Pickle You book, Creole food. And
Uh-huh.
this lady, she actually had written the dates of every city she had lived in.
Oh,
She ended up in Orange County, where I'm living in Orange County. And then she had about with cancer, and she had little notes about that in that book. And then she also was giving advice on how to create flavors. So I thought that was quite interesting that she had that.
yeah. And it must have obviously been a cookbook she looked at a lot if there were different dates from different years in her life.
Right, yeah. She said, I'm living here right now. I'm living at this place right now. And wherever she moved, she had that cookbook with her. And I thought that was wow. That was really amazing. She told her story about writing in those notes. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and I
And
always think it's kind of sad though when I mean, maybe that might not have had any family that was left, but people just get rid of them, and then now it's in the hands of someone you didn't even know her, but I guess you feel like you kind of have a peek into her life by looking at her notes that were in the books.
Yes, that's true. And she also had a match set from that same restaurant, where some matches had been used, and so it was in the book too as a placeholder. So I'm thinking she might have went to New Orleans and went to that particular restaurant and brought the book and the matches with her. That's just my guess on that.
Yeah,
But I thought that's something how those old cookbooks really tell a story
yeah,
about how people lived, and you can tell by the stains on the pages of the flour what people cook mostly, or the notes they talk about. This was good, very good. Don't try. This needs a little bit more particular ingredient. So it's like they're telling the story by what they're cooking. So it's pretty. I
yeah.
like that.
I
Mhm.
bought a 1964 edition of Joy of Cooking many years ago, and Spring, the person that had that book took a pen to every single recipe. And they
Mhm.
wrote things like, try this one, not that one. I mean, they X through things, they drew through things. I mean, the whole book. And I probably wouldn't have bought it because there was so much writing in it, but it just fascinated me how they put the notations for almost everything.
Mhm.
And it's almost like they were talking to the book.
Right.
Yeah, with their pen. But I think
Mhm.
what's interesting too, you can see a stain, you can see like a chocolate splash or a grease stain, but the
Mhm.
flour dust, that's actually part of the ingredient that they used
Right.
still
Mhm.
in the book.
Mhm. And then you also can see what they didn't use, because if you look at those book good, you see, oh, this look like this section of the book was never touched.
Right.
It still looks new. So it's yeah, those cookbooks tell a lot, give a lot of history. And so when I start talking about, when I'm looking at writing Southern Roots, telling the stories in the head notes was a good idea, sort of my thought on how they wrote their book, wrote the notes in the books.
Yeah. Yeah. So you took that and you brought that into your own book. I think you mentioned that you you did a lot of writing for Southern Roots. It's not just a collection of recipes. You wrote stories, you wrote head notes, you interspersed them throughout the book. Let's talk a little bit about writing for you. When you worked in the restaurant, were you doing a lot of writing, or did this become something that you did as a result of just becoming an author for Southern Roots?
Well, I didn't do a lot of writing in the restaurant. I did a lot of reading when I was in the restaurant. If I'm at the cashier station and if it's not busy, I always had a book there. My mama told me one time, "You're reading too much," and I knew she was not saying that, people coming in, you got to make sure that, you look up, make sure people notice.
Yes.
But that was my way of just sort of, being okay when I wasn't so busy. But, just seeing my mama and what she did, and she wrote the cookbook, and I love to cook. I said, wow. She showed me that I could do that. But what I did was I started writing a book about entertaining at home. Had this manuscript completed. I submitted it to a publisher. She said it wasn't marketable. I went to an agent and she didn't have time, it was too much work. And so I went to a friend of mine, Marcy Farris, who wrote the foreword for the book. And she looked at my stuff. She said, Spring, I see what you're trying to do. And she told me, you need to write a Conan memoir. And I said, well, Master, no one wants to hear what I have to say. And she said, yes, they do. They do want to hear. And so I left that meeting feeling really good.
Yeah.
And said, I can really do this. And so when I sat down to start writing and looking at the recipe I had created for the entertaining book, these stories just start coming to mind, because the recipes already had a story. And then I start creating other recipes based on my memories. It sort of start flooding back to me. And when I'm writing, I don't set like a time or outlines and all that. That's just not how I work. I try to do that, but it's just not how I function as a writer. So just whenever I feel like it, that's when I start writing. Yeah.
And you use pen and paper or computer?
I like paper. First, I start with paper, and I go to computer. Yeah, pen and paper. Yeah,
I agree about that too. I keep a notebook in my kitchen and write things down, and I always start there. What about your mom? Did she use pen and paper at the time too when she was doing hers?
Yes, so it was pen and paper. Yes,
Yeah.
and then she, got some folks to type it out for us.
Yeah. Boy, book publishing was different even in 1999 when she wrote her first book. So it really changed in terms of the way that the book is even sent to the publisher and the way the pages are created. Everything, of course, digital and computerized now versus having to be typed and then, maybe a printed manuscript mailed into the publisher.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So you would, what about, there's people that listen to this podcast that have a dream of writing a cookbook. What would you tell them?
I would say write your cookbook and be patient about it. And for me, when I was getting all those rejections, I had to hold on to, I believed in my project. So I just hold on to it. And then timing came right, will put people in my space that, help me and mentor me through that thought process. And so, just make sure you have a mentor and just hang on to your idea.
Yeah.
And make sure your recipes are delicious and creative and good.
Yeah, because it does take time. It's hard to hear a no and hard to get a rejection. But if you do hang on to your idea and you love your idea and you can do it and you have someone on your side telling you that, it does really help a lot.
Yes, it does.
I always hope through this podcast, even if people don't know me personally or they don't know you personally, but that we can encourage them through talking about it that way to them.
Yeah, it takes time, but you just got to hang in there. And I talk about that in one of the stories in my book, how I was encouraged by this plum tree, and knowing that, if I keep going forward, I can do it,
Yeah.
And my mom always used to say, if you can do anything you want to, as long as you put your mind to it.
That's right. Because the plum tree doesn't grow overnight, right? It starts as a little, I'm even amazed that seeds start for trees the same way they start for like a tomato plant. Like if you look at a plum tree that's healthy and producing fruit, that it started in the very same way. It always boggles my mind that all that potential is just in that seed to create a prolific fruit tree. It's an amazing thing. And it's the same for writers. Same for people. There's always possibility. If someone else has done it, that means that it's possible for you too. Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree with that. I just I love reading and love writing.
Yeah.
And I was just so happy to be able to put it out. And mainly thing too is to be able to tell a story about my mom
Yeah.
and our experience together and the community, the Northside community.
Yeah.
That was really special to me to be
Yeah.
able to do that and get it out into the world.
Yeah. And then the other side of the writing the cookbook is the recipe part.
Hmm.
We're not just writing the stories, right? We got to write the recipes. Let's talk a little bit about your recipe writing and your philosophy about what a recipe is and the tips that you have for writing good recipes.
So with the recipes, just looking at for me, I want to get away from the traditional Southern cooking mostly because that's what my mom did. She had two cookbooks, and so I had to figure out what flavors I can add to a particular dish to sort of create something new. And this is a book called The Flavor Bible, which is really good. And I definitely use that a lot to sort of figure out, okay, how can I build the flavor in this particular dish, and then two. Just making sure that I stick to my roots, stick to my Southern heritage in cooking, because when I tried to go outside of that, it didn't work for me
Yeah.
without learning from my roots. Now, I remember the time I was trying to cook chicken Kiev, and I took it to my mom. She said it was dry, and then I thought about it over the years. I said, what? I know how to fry chicken. So I was so caught up in that fancy French name that I thought that all it is a French piece of fried chicken. So of course now I can cook it because I know what it is, and and so I just look into what you grew up learning to eat, and just cook until you get it right. If I make a particular item and it didn't come out right, then I said, what can I do to it different? And then sometimes just let it go.
Yeah.
I know one of the recipes that was going to put in the book. It was this fried. Hot water cornbread, and I put the corn in there and corn kernels in there. And so I gave it to my friend to test it, and it was just popping. The corn was just pop, 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 pop. And so she said, "Spring, this corn just popping everywhere." With me, it popped, but I'm used to hot grease.
Yes.
And so what I did, got rid of the corn, I put the okra in there instead. So just trying to figure out how you can make that recipe work. I want to keep the same base of the recipe, but just change one ingredients and make it work.
And it didn't pop as much with the okra in it as it did with the corn kernels.
Right, didn't pop it all with the okra because, of course, I guess corn is like, you get that heat in, it's gonna be like
Yes.
popcorn,
Yeah.
so have the air coming in, moisture and air going in there.
Well, that's a good testament to having people try your recipes too before you actually publish them, because they'll tell you things that you never even experienced when you made them, just exactly like what you said. You probably
Right.
didn't think anything about the corn kernels popping a little bit.
But somebody else it's going to be a disaster for somebody else. Yeah, I get that when she said that. I sort of saw how somebody else would feel about preparing that recipe, and I
Yeah,
said, well, I can't do that.
right. Right.
Mhm.
So you talk about a recipe being good enough. Tell
Mhm.
us what you mean by that.
Well, it's like for me, I like to cook and I want to get that type taste when something can be good, but you get something that's really good.
Yeah.
Because I remember the first time I made scones, they were good scones. And then I I said, okay, the science of it, where if your butter's big enough, and then once you get into the oven, it melts and create these air pockets, we create the flakiness. And so I started making my butter bits larger, and now my scones got their to them. They're delicious. They
Yeah.
were good before, now they're really good. And so, and just sort of testing stuff and making sure that if you know what's good and you know what's great, and so stick to the great stuff
Yeah,
when you cook.
that's right. And I
Mhm.
think with cookbooks in particular, people want to be like they want to make your recipe and think that was really, really good. I'm going to make that again.
Mhm.
And that's how
Yes.
recipes, I think, become part of people's uh that'll become the stain page in the book. The part where there's the
Right.
flour, that's the part of your book that they'll go back to. And then there'll come a time possibly where they don't even need the book anymore to make that because they've made it so many times.
Right. Yeah. It's
I I love how recipes that we put in our books, we don't even really know when it becomes part of someone's everyday repertoire, like something they can make without even looking at our books. It's incredible to think that that happens with something that we write.
Yeah, and just to see people that's gonna actually make a recipe, I on my social media, one lady said, "Well, she made my strawberry biscuit cake as an extra treat for her birthday. And then someone else they're gonna try out my artichoke and spinach gratin over the weekend. And then I went to one of my book events, and this lady had my book, and she had about 15 pieces of paper, marked out, I guess, what she's going to try. And I said, wow, that's pretty cool
It
that
is neat.
she's look at the book already and decided this is what I'm going to try.
Yeah.
She really dug into it. So
Yeah.
that was
And I
good.
think that's how people are with cookbooks. They don't necessarily like read them from cover to cover and then put them away. People study them and they decide what it is they are going to cook, or they read it. They might read it cover to cover, but I love it when people are planning already how they're going to use a book. Got a funny story to tell you about St. Patrick's Day. You mentioned incorporating and making a scone more like a biscuit, so it was little more flaky, buttery. You took your biscuit knowledge and applied it to scones, right?
Yes.
Well, St. Patrick's Day, we were having some friends over for dinner because my mom always made corned beef and cabbage. And the friends I was having over, their mom never made it. Of course, my mom made it because her mom made it, and she made it for us, and I made it for my kids, but my friends had never had it. So I said, I'm going to have them over for dinner. And as I was getting ready to mix up, soda bread to me is like it's like a big biscuit. It's like a big scone, but it's Irish instead of. So it's funny you had said that. I did the same thing. I put a little more butter in it. And when I turned it down on the counter, I folded it a few more times so that it was not quite as just doughy. It was a little bit more folded, and it was the best soda bread ever. But I took my experience with making biscuits and took it to the soda bread, and you took it to the scones. But you can do that when you're developing and making recipes. You can make it your own. And taking what you know and making it just a little bit better and a little bit more delicious is what I like to think.
That's true. Yeah. That's the
Yeah,
fun part of cooking,
it is the fun
just
part.
discovering. Yeah.
Yeah. So you put 100 recipes in your book, Southern Roots. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And
100.
and tell us about the Northside community. What about Northside community was so special for you?
It was back then. It was like it was a community. It no longer exists now. It's just like you saw your next door neighbors every day. You played outside with the other kids. You went to neighbors' house for the apple and plum trees and cherry trees, and it was just a very tight knit community. Everybody sort of looked out for each other. The sound of the ice cream truck coming down, everybody running to the mom to get some money. It was just a very tight knit community and a loving communities. And the ladies always invited you into their kitchen. You can just go to someone's house and just stand in the kitchen and watch them cook.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just
Amazing.
thought that was really a fun time.
Yeah. I think it's a very special time. And you wrote this book as a tribute to your mother and the 50 years that you spent in the family business. So let's talk a little bit about this book and what's in the book and what's special about the book and what you want people to know about Southern Roots.
Okay. So I was asked by my editor, what do I want people to do with my book? And my answer was, I want them to read the stories, I want them to look at the beautiful pictures, and I want them to get into the kitchen and cook. And with those 100 recipes, there's a modern take on Southern cooking. And also I have like menus in the back, which you can create your own particular menu, and all the dishes and the silverware and the tablecloths and napkins came from my collection, except for one plum bowl for my yoga bowl that a friend of mine let me borrow. But it's just a wonderful book, and the stories that I talk about how I remembered, spending time with my uncle in the garden, or my uncle Jim working at the rat scale, and how he spent time with us, and especially my mama's kitchen and how she invited us into her kitchen to spend time with us and learn that oral recipe sharing, not even knowing that's what was going on. And writing this book, I realized, okay, so I was talking about, my mama's history, how she learned to cook, and then how she showed us how we learned to cook. Well, she was growing up on the Chatham County farm. She was responsible for bringing the wood into the house, and so her going back and forth getting this wood and keeping that fire going, she watched and tasted while her sister cooked and a family friend cooked. And so it's just the fact that she wanted to share that with us as well. It was really good that she did that. I just can't imagine, not have been in the kitchen with mom during those times.
Yeah.
And then when people tell me that they don't know how to cook, sometimes I say, "Huh, you didn't go in the kitchen with your mom or that?" I was just surprised with that. For me, that was just second nature
Yeah.
of being there. We just love being there with her.
Yeah. My mom, we'd spend time in the kitchen with her and then also with her mother, my grandmother. And I don't know if it's because we had a lot of kids, but I always felt like when my mom was in the kitchen, she was trying to get a meal on the table.
Mhm,
She did it every day. But I always felt like when we went to my grandmother's house, there was usually it was more one-on-one, like me with
mhm,
her rather than me with like, other sisters around. And
mhm,
plus my grandmother always remembered the things that we liked to eat. So everybody would go over there and she would just remember to make she always made fried eggs for me, but she'd make
mhm,
something else for my other sisters. So it's kind of very special to have those memories in the kitchen with your mom,
mhm,
grandma cooking with you or for you, and watching them and learning from them.
mhm.
Really, truly amazing. Now, what I want people to understand about this book too is these recipes, like you mentioned earlier, are not your mom's recipes or recipes from the cookbook. I
Right.
mean, from the restaurant necessarily, you're inspired by that, but these are new creations that you created.
Yes, yeah, this all my recipes. For instance, I take the chicken and gravy recipe that my mom had at the restaurant, and I added a Jewish sausage to that to create my own. So yeah, just take a little modern take on that particular dish. But yeah, I create them all, and I entertain a lot at home. And a lot of the recipes is what I prepared already
Yeah.
for my family. During the holidays and for family and friends at the table.
Yeah, and you have everything from breakfast and brunch to snacks and starters, soup and salad, vegetable sides, main dishes. You also have a section called holidays at home. Let's talk a little bit about holidays for you. And you wanted to talk about entertaining in the books that you thought you might want to write. But
Mhm.
uh, let's for the holiday section. What holidays do you really like to cook for, and what kinds of things do you like to make? Maybe we can talk about. We just had Easter,
Mhm.
so what kinds of things come to mind when you think about the spring holidays?
But with spring holidays, well, birthdays for me coming
Oh,
up
is
in
it
the
birth?
spring.
Let's talk about celebrating a birthday.
Okay. And so it's like for me, it's for the holidays, say if you take Christmas, which is gone, and you set a table, people have like the silver and the gold, and they'll put it away for the rest of the year. My thing is bring that out for your birthday celebration. Set that table. You won't have the reds and the greens, but you can add some pink or yellows to that silver gold to sort of make it pop. And far as the recipes, actually, I just entertained for some friends for our March birthdays, and I had like the braised beef short ribs, so mashed potatoes and turnips,
Yes,
and um, and that was really good. I have that in the book, so that was really good. And that's one
yes,
of the dishes that remind me of my mom. And when the first time she sat those beef ribs in front of me, and I tasted it, and yeah, I was in heaven. So that's one of my comfort food items, and so I
yes,
brought her to the table on that day.
yes.
Mhm.
Well, I also saw a recipe. I know we did just have Easter, but you have um, a spiral ham with a cornbread and pickle crust. You have got to tell me about that ham.
So I had saw in an old cookbook where they had stuffed ham. You say put incision into the ham, and you stuff the pickle down in there, and bread. And I was like, I said, let me just do something different. I'm not gonna stuff a ham, so I decided to put it on the coating of the ham instead. So I just take and put mustard glaze on it, and then use that as a adhesive, and then I put the pickles and the cornbread on top, and to toast that up.
Bet it was good.
Good. Yeah, it's really good, really good.
It
Yeah.
looks good. It looks good. The photos are nice. Who did photography for you?
Yeah, Anna did photography. She's an excellent photographer, and she was just really excited about, working with me when I called her to do the work. And she was leaving out the door, talking about what we're gonna do next, tomorrow we're gonna do this and that. She was just amazing, to the point where we're gonna go to the market and take pictures. I can just see the sun coming out. I mean,
Oh,
she's just very passionate about her work,
yeah.
and she was a blessing to do
Yeah.
the photo shoot for me.
Yeah. I think the photos for a cookbook are more than just the photos. Like people have a vision for what it's going to all go together and look like.
Mhm.
They're able to make their photography bring the whole thing together. And so
Mhm.
it is a lot of fun to work with a photographer. So you
Mhm.
mentioned the strawberry biscuit cake as something that someone said they were going to make. Why don't you tell us about the strawberry biscuit cake? I think that sounds delicious.
So it's almost like it's a strawberry sort of shortcake, not shortcake, but it's the same that you have like a short strawberry shortcake with a biscuit, but it's going into the pan and I'm putting a sauce over it to give it some extra moisture in the strawberries. And it's really good. And it's like a cake that you actually like cut out rather than take out of the pan.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really good.
Sounds great. Now, you mentioned that you had a lot of family working at the restaurant, so you've been spending a lot of time with your extended family because of the restaurant. And one of the recipes I read about somebody in the peanut rum and Coke recipe,
Mhm.
um, and the photo has the Coca-Cola bottle, and you can see peanuts in the Coke. So tell us about this recipe, but also about the family member that you were inspired by for this peanut rum and Coke.
Yeah, that's, my grandfather. He was always be sitting on his porch, especially in the summertime, drinking those, peanuts and, Coke, just empty your salted peanuts into the Coke and just drink it, straight up. My dad loved that too. I can just see him now just crunching on those peanuts,
But
while
people
he
from
would
the
drink.
people that aren't from the South might not realize that that's what people would actually do. They would take a bottle of Coke and pour the peanuts in the Coke.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really good too. You get that sweet and salty flavors that they talk about now. And so I decided, what can I do different again? So I said, let me add some rum to the bottle. So I think that'll be a good thing to, set up for a party, having a bottle of rum and your bottles of soda and then your peanuts and just let people make their own.
I think
Um,
that's a great idea. It
mhm,
really is. I'm going to have to give that a try sometime because we're always looking for different things to do for a little
mhm,
fun drink to have for a party. And the Chapel Hill cocktail, you have a recipe, of course, for old fashioned lemonade.
mhm.
Um, but this was created by your cousin, Larry Williams. Tell us about that.
Yeah, my mom actually decided to open up a bar for a little while. It didn't last long at the restaurant. And Larry, she sent him to bartending school. And so he came up with that drink, the Chapia cocktail. And it's really, really delicious drink. And I use the homemade lemonade to make it. You have the bourbon in there. Um, and so it's a really good Southern drink. And it was very popular at Mama Dips when we were selling it too. But I think the Big Dipper was the most popular one. But it
Tell us
was
about
really,
that one. Yep.
well, it's actually had about 5 different, like, sweet type liquors in it, and, we used to get folks come in and order 5 and 6, just a group of people to order them, so I had to learn how to, make a bunch of drinks at one time, multiple drinks, and I would just line the glasses up and just, do a free pour, down the line to make them up for them,
So the
but,
recipe that you put in the book serves six, so you can mix up a larger batch and then pour it into people's glasses rather than mix them individually, right?
yes, mhm,
Yeah. Yeah. I bet it was interesting though to have a restaurant that didn't have a bar and then decide to open a bar in the restaurant. It's a whole
mhm.
different thing to have to serve alcohol, I would believe.
Yeah, it was different, and not only that, it brought longer hours to us. We were already working a lot, and so you're going from closing at 10 to closing at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, with that, we just didn't want to keep doing that, so
Yeah.
we just gave that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, because by the time 2 in the morning rolls around, you're closing. I mean, you probably had to be back sometime before lunch to get started, obviously, with for the next
Yes.
day. And that
Mhm.
doesn't you don't want to be there all the time.
No, not all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to be
Yeah.
able to, live your life a little.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a beautiful new book, and I think the photos and the way it looks and the stories, it's lovely. So I know that people will really enjoy not only using it but reading it and looking at it as well.
Okay.
So
Thank you so much.
cookbooks, yeah, cookbooks. You love to talk about vintage cookbooks, your mother's cookbooks, this cookbook, but I think that people that love cookbooks, there's also cookbooks that we use in our kitchens that inspired us. So What was a favorite cookbook of yours? And I'm going to link to it in our show notes.
I have to say my mama cookbook of not just of course because this true is my favorite cookbook because it's the food I grew up eating, and it tells a story about my family and her family that's documented, and it's just yeah, traditional Southern cooking that I love.
Yes.
And
Yes. So which one, when you, I think your mother wrote two. So when you think about those books, what are the differences between the two cookbooks that she wrote?
So the Mama Dip's Kitchen Cookbook was her first book that she wrote, and that has traditional Southern cooking that she grew up going on the farm. She cooked growing up on the farm.
Okay.
And then the Mama Dip's Family Cookbook is more like maybe the 70s stuff where you start using pre-made ingredients, adding that to your recipes.
Yep.
I'll take, for instance, she has a recipe in Mama Dip's Kitchen where she has chicken and dumplings, so you make the dumplings from scratch. But in the Mama Dip's Kitchen, Mama Dip's Family Cookbook, she has dumpling, but she used flour tortilla.
Oh.
And I said, Mama, flour tortilla? And then she cooked it at a cooking demonstration once and gave me some. She said, see, I told you, and it worked. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
those sort of things like that.
But that wouldn't obviously have been something that she, when she was growing up on the farm and cooking on the farm, she wouldn't have used the flour tortilla. She just made them, like you said, from scratch.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
She did that only for that recipe for the cookbook.
Interesting.
She's never cooked that at home other than cooking demonstrations. She
Yeah.
goes to the regular dumplings. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I will link to both of those in the show notes, as well as your book here, Southern Roots, Recipes and Stories from Mama Dip's Daughter. So you
Yes,
mentioned that your daughter has a restaurant also, or a bakery. Is it in the same town?
it is here in Chapel Hill. She has a restaurant, Tanya Cookies, and then Tanya's Cafe. And she started out with the bakery first, and then she expanded over to the restaurant part. She has Southern cooked food in there, and also some sandwiches. And her cookies, Tanya Cookies, one of Oprah's favorite thing.
Oh,
And then she took and put take my mother's cream cheese pound cake and won that again in 2024. So she's really doing a great job with baking and being creative in her space of
yeah.
cooking.
Yeah.
She does
What's
really
it,
good.
what's it like to watch your daughter continue in the restaurant business?
I think it's great. I think to see her carry on Mama legacy and just really want to, to do that, to honor Mama. And as well, she said, that's what I know. People don't want to do something. This is what I know. I know food. I know
Right.
cooking. I know
Right.
restaurant. Yeah.
Right. That's true. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. So continuing the legacy. Well, it's
Mhm.
been a joy to talk to you, hear all about your book and your experience at Mama Dip University. But why don't you tell everybody how they can connect with you online? On Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, well, my website is springcounsel.me. My Substack is The Collected Life. Instagram is spring.counsel, and my Facebook is spring.counsel as well.
Okay, great.
Uh,
So tell me,
yeah,
what's it like to so you do a Substack newsletter?
what's it like? What
You
you
like
say?
to, you like you doing Substack?
I do. I do. I was surprised. I was doing a blog first, and then the blog was not getting much attention. And then I said, blog is kind of hard. You have to write more. So let me go to Substack. People talking about Substack and try it. It's more shorter articles. And I'm getting more interest in my Substack. So it's really growing and
Great.
doing good.
That's
Yeah.
great. Very
So
good.
I
No, I
like
think
that.
that's great. I think it's a great space for people to write about food and cooking
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
memories, whatever it is you want to write about. I often tell people it's if you're trying to find your voice or you're trying to write more, I think it's a great place to turn to. And
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
hearing that. I love hearing that you're using that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, I talk about some recipes and have some recipes on there, and then my collection of tableware. So I want to talk about table settings and showing people how to mix patterns and things. So right now on my table, I have this really busy table. Actually, it's fabric, a bulk of fabric I found at a thrift store. So I've like these 5 napkins laid out, deciding which napkin I was going to use to set that table. And so I would just sort of give people an idea, when I'm trying to create a table setting, this is the process I go through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you do that. like to set the table, but I don't know that I think it's fascinating when people have the choices of the dishware and the napkins and the settings, and I think it's a wonderful thing to do, and I'm sure your guests enjoy it when they come over.
Yeah, they do. They do. Especially if you put out a little dainty little coffee cup. They really like that. They really feel special
Yeah,
then.
we're used to using a big mug, I guess, huh?
Yeah, yeah. But it's all, all my thrift shop finds. You talking about going to different cities, no
Yeah,
matter where I go.
yeah,
If I see a thrift shop, I'm going to make a U-turn. If
yeah,
I see a state sale, I'm going to make a U-turn.
yeah.
But I found this interesting piece I'm gonna post about. It's like a big ornament, gold ornament. And I said, what is this? I couldn't figure it out because it had a mirror and lid. And so I said, well, let me find out. So I Googled and found out it's a individual ice bucket.
Oh, wow.
An
Individual.
individual ice bucket. And I'm going to do a Substack post about that.
Huh.
And it has all these different components to it. And I also went to the church thrift shop about 3 weeks ago, opened up this case, and it was a traveling bar.
Oh,
And so I got all these components in that. So these are the kind of things I want to be sharing on my Substack.
nice.
Those vintage things, and also, how to set tables and recipes and stuff like that.
So I guess if you're going on a car trip or a picnic or you're going to a hotel, you take your traveling bar with you.
Yes, I use something. Sometimes my friend says, "Spring, you bring some cocktails with you, so I
Come
can
on over
put
with
it in
your traveling bar, right?
and
You
put it
know,
in the trunk."
I, yeah, I think it's fascinating to think that everybody at the table could have their own ice bucket.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I wish I
Yeah,
can find some more of those, but
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I said, wow. I said, what is this thing? It has a lot of other little things going to it, as well. Actually, if you sort of take the top off from the gold, you open up, has another little lid, and there's a mirror
Mm.
there. And I was like, that's why I can think, what is this? And what the mirror does is, if you're far away, you can open the mirror and see how much ice you still have
Oh, I
in there.
see.
And it also reflects down on the ice, keep the ice cold.
Cold. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting. That
That
was
is
a good
interesting.
find.
That is a good find. What do you like better, estate sales or vintage stores?
Well, thrift shops is my favorite because I can go all the time.
Yeah,
Estate sales, I love those too, but I have more luck, I guess, at these thrift stores. I'll go often, but I have found some good things at estate sales. Estate sales be a little bit more pricey than thrift stores,
yeah.
but yeah, I like thrift shopping.
I guess the
Love it.
thrift stores too, if there's some that you regularly go to, you know what's there. And if you see something new pop up, you know that it's new, right? You may be, I haven't seen this here before, or maybe there's a new booth or a new vendor carrying different things.
Well, yeah, with the thrift stores here in Chapel Hill, you pretty much if I go, you can say, well, this coffee set has been there for a while, or
Yeah.
oh, somebody got that. I was the other day and I was gonna get one of the candy dishes I was talking about earlier. And I said, well, I got my hands full, I come back to it. So I'm over there looking at the jewelry, and this lady at the checkout with my with my
Oh, she
candy
bought
dish.
it?
Yeah, she bought it with something else. And I was like, and I told her the story about it. I think she thought I was asking her to give it to me, but I
Oh,
wasn't.
no, yeah. You're just telling her how you used them.
Yeah, yeah, but it was that was a fun moment. And I always tell myself and tell other people, never let something stay there. You get it right then. And I did the total opposite. But yeah, I love the thrift stores, and
You
I need to
walked
stay
a-
out of
you walk
them.
you walked away from it and someone else picked it up.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to go ahead on and get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my mom and dad, when they would come to visit, they always wanted to, they liked it because they could give them things to do when they stopped in a town if they were traveling or on the
Mhm.
road somewhere. They always enjoyed that. So it's wonderful. Well, I'm gonna have to check your Substack out. And what's it called? The Collect. What did you say the
The
name of it was?
collected life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spring Council, the collected life. Yeah.
Nice. Very good. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Have
Thank
fun
you.
meeting all your cookbook people with their notes in the book about what they're going to cook, and wish you nothing but success
Well, thank you so much.
with your book, Southern Roots.
And I did want to, if I can get a shout out to my photographer because I didn't see her name
Sure,
right.
sure.
Anna Roth Barzine is my photographer. She's right here in Chapel Hill.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah.
So she was close by when you were working with her, and uh, sounds like you
Yes.
developed quite a relationship, and you got a nice photographer that brought your book to life. She really did a great job.
Yes, she did. She did a wonderful job.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very good. Well, I hope you have a good time promoting your book. Thanks again
Well,
for
thank
coming
you
on the
so much.
show. Okay.
And thank you for having me. It's
Yeah,
been
thank
fun.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. Again, all the links can be found in the show notes at www.cookbooklove.co. And if you are interested in writing a cookbook of your own, please check out the free cookbook writing masterclass called How to Get Paid to Write a Cookbook. It is designed specifically for food or nutrition experts, and you can check that out at www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/free. So that's it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. And until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.